Welcome to the kingdom. I'm Chris, and this is Good Enough Gaming. Howdy folks, and welcome to this video about the new update of OnePageRules that just dropped. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking, because it's what I'm thinking. Already? Didn't we just have an update? What, have you been having lunch with GW or something? Seriously, if the rules weren't free, I'd be calling shenanigans and be very, very suspicious. But they're free. It's a free update. So instead, I'll just gripe that now my Learn to Play videos that I spent a lot of time making are now a little bit more redundant, and I'm going to start getting nasty comments on them that I'm getting rules wrong. So thanks for that. But seriously, having said that, OnePageRules has announced that while armies will continue to be updated quarterly, core rule changes that are going to affect entire game systems are now going to be on a one-year cycle. So we're not going to have these updates hitting us every few months. And I have to say, thank you, good sir, thank you. Please stick to that. One of the reasons I abandoned 40K was too many rules changes, updates way too fast. So rule updates once a year, army updates that will automatically be pushed to the Army Forge every quarter, so I can handle that. That's great. Okay, so let's move on to the updates here in edition 3.3. So first, the Army Forge is now fully linked, meaning the lists you create on one device will be available on all your other devices, as long as you're logged in.
And there was much rejoicing.
And that's fantastic. That was one of my biggest complaints about the Army Forge, and one of the reasons I never bothered logging in, because it really didn't matter. But now it does. So bravo OPR, well done. The next change is purely aesthetic, but I think it's a step in the right direction. The pages of the books now look, well, professional. They have a nice background that gives me kind of a D&D player's handbook vibe, and it's a huge improvement over the stark black and white that's been there since OnePageRules began. Those who purchased the World Book have already seen what I'm talking about with this new page design, but for those of you who haven't, here's an example of the old and new, just to give you an idea. Okay, now let's move on to the first significant rule change, morale. Now, as anyone who has played OPR knows, morale is absolutely brutal and unforgiving. Entire units get wiped out in a single round of melee. Units get to spend the entire game being shaken from shooting and then recovering from being shaken and never really doing anything. Models in skirmish get tapped out, and my personal favorite, for those of you who watched that skirmish battle where I played Knight Brothers versus Ninja Orcs in a firefight game, a turn 1 victory when 3 of my models were killed in the round, triggering a morale test, and then all my remaining models failed the morale test and fled the field. It was the shortest game I've ever played. So personally, I've wanted to see a bit of a change in how morale works for quite some time now. Now, I would have only adjusted the rule to trigger when a unit is below half strength, maybe at a third or a quarter, instead of at half or below. That was my biggest complaint, because I gotta tell you, bringing a 30 wound Titan and then watching it flee with 15 wounds left felt wrong. Now, shaken units have options. They can still sit tight for a turn and recover, exact same as before. Or now they can activate, but at a penalty of -1 quality, -1 defense, half movement, and they can't hold objectives. So that leaves room for a Hail Mary attack or a desperate escape, and the unit will remain shaken until it takes that turn to just sit tight. So it's an interesting trade-off, at least theoretically. I'll be curious to see how it works once we get it on the tabletop. Now, this is going to have a much bigger impact on skirmish games, because morale played a lot bigger of a role in bringing an end to skirmish games rather quickly, especially with that ability to stun something and then charge it and simply tap it out. And the end round when you did your morale test could be absolutely devastating for low quality armies. So I imagine now this new rule about morale will extend game time a little bit longer, at the very least one more round, and possibly more. Lastly, on the topic of morale, points will decrease just a little bit to account for this change. Maybe only 5 to 10 points per unit, but at larger point games that could work out to be an entire additional unit added to the army. So games of OPR are going to get longer, but how much longer we will have to see as we start playing this new edition and seeing how it works out on the tabletop. Now the next major change is the introduction of a new rule, the assault rule. As the game is currently designed, units can shoot or fight on their activation, but not both. So a hybrid unit, that's a unit that has both decent guns and decent melee, they cost more points to reflect their flexible nature, but on their activation they really can't deliver the bang for the buck that their points demand because they can only do one or the other. Now of course it's possible on their turn that they will shoot, and then if they get charged they're pretty decent in melee, but the assault rule aims to make these hybrid units feel more like jack of all trades that they're meant to be. So the assault rule allows you to shoot at a unit and then charge it, but at the cost of -1 to hit in both your shooting and your melee phase, as well as your distance of charging being cut in half. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. A quality 3 unit will still do pretty well, even with the penalty, whereas a unit that's quality 4 or 5, it might not be worth it to assault, and it might be better just to stick with either shooting or charging. This change is also going to put a premium on units that will have both assault and fast, or very fast, allowing it to assault from the traditional charge distance, or at least pretty close to it. There are also a load of changes to specific armies, and I'm not going to go over all of them because some of them are pretty minor. They're all listed on the OPR news page, so you can go and check them out there, and they've already been pushed to the Army Forge, so any of your lists that you create now, it's already there. I will note, however, that there were 3 armies that were singled out in particular because they have more than just a few subtle updates, so let's talk about them really quick. First, the alien hives are getting a bit of a nerf. Big monsters are being reduced to quality 4, both to tone them down a little bit, but also, in relation to that, it reduces their points cost. Now, some other special rules and rule combos have been adjusted to close some loopholes that made the alien hives a little bit more powerful than their points should have allowed. The next army that's going to have some significant changes are the Custodian Brothers. They're getting some updates, and they're going to especially benefit from the new assault rule since they're kind of the quintessential hybrid army. So now, like Gimli, they will be very dangerous at short distances. The third army that's getting some big changes are the Shadowstalkers. They're going to be getting a huge facelift in preparation for the release of the new STL files that are going to be coming out soon. So the army's getting new heroes, new units, and there are changes to existing units to better align with the new model designs. Now, I will mention one more change for those of you who have the advanced rulebook. You're going to want to check out the deployment page. One of the previous deployment maps is gone and has been replaced with something very new. I won't say much more about it since that stuff isn't part of the free rules, but when I looked at the new deployment map, I thought, take me out to the ball game. So, there you have it, folks. The new update of OPR that we're going to be using for the next 12 months or so. Have fun trying it out. Keep your dice on the table, and let me know if you thought that it's good enough.